Hello, friends. It's been a few weeks, but we needed to get you another update on what's going on at Hope Farm. It's been a rough last couple of weeks because we've actually had one of our carpenters pass away. Larry Johansson, or Joey, as everyone knew him. Everyone knew him as Joey. Passed away last week, and he'd only been here probably 3 months, but had done a lot of good work. And we saw him every day. So he was a great guy. He was a great guy.
So nice. Worked so hard. Just great energy. Always positive. Great to be around.
Exactly.
Young,
yeah.
And fit. Completely unexpected.
Yeah, was totally unexpected. So we knew him pretty well, but the guys that work here that grew up in Natchez, Mississippi, have known him their whole lives pretty much. So it was even harder on them. But we just wanted to tell you about him so that he lives on. He's in this video. We'll show him doing some work. In his eulogy, he talked about coming out to Hope Farm and how that he loved construction and creating things. So we're actually going to put in our description a link that you can go to if you'd like to donate some money to his family.
He's got 2 children, a 13-year-old boy and a 10-year-old girl. Of course, this family... Again, Joey was 51, in fantastic physical condition. No anticipation of losing dad, breadwinner, provider at this point at all. At all. And so we did a fundraiser and raised money for the funeral on our Instagram account, but we feel like we would like to do something for his children, just to put something aside for his children for the future. So Kevin wants to link our PayPal in the description below. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave a little gift of love for those babies. We're so excited to be partnering with Lume. Lume is a product that I've been using for about the last 3 years. I saw an ad not unlike this one on social media, thought I'm going to give that a try. I'll put it to the test to see if Lume can keep up with me doing restoration work in the southern humidity, getting as nasty and sweaty as I do. Bought the Lume, discovered it's the best deodorant that I personally have ever used. Better still, full confession time, I refuse to wear socks with my tennis shoes while I'm doing my work. You can imagine what that results in with my poor tennis shoes. Using Lume's full body deodorant, no more odor in my tennis shoes, and full odor control for up to 72 hours. I love this stuff. It's the absolute best deodorant that I personally have ever used. Lume was invented by OBGYN Shannon Klingman. Lume deodorant stops odor before it starts. It's skin safe, baking soda free, cruelty free, vegan, pH optimized to use anywhere on your body, and it's paraben free. I love that Lume uses an eco-friendly nitrogen-based propellant in their canister. I love that alcohol is not the first ingredient on any of their products, and I adore the fact that 0 out of 99 participants in their clinical trial reported any irritation with the product. Lume also has a wide range of aluminum-free products available. It won't stain your clothes, and it comes in 8 different scents. My personal favorite is the Clean Tangerine. Lume's Starter Pack Bundle is a great deal for new customers. It comes with a full-size deodorant, a cream deodorant tube or spray deodorant, 2 free products like the wipes or mini body wash, free U.S. shipping, and just for my followers, Lume is offering an extra $5 off when you click the link in the description below. That's a deal of over 40% off.
Add to all that, just yesterday, which is a little fresher wound, we lost one of our sweet babies. Our Australian Shepherd, Boo, who we'd had for
14 and a half years.
For 14 and a half years.
It's okay. We got her, she and her sister, Scout. We had actually had a really tragic and horrific loss of some babies while we were gone on a work trip, and we lost them. And so Scout and Boo were our grief babies. And
litter mates. Yeah,
litter mates. No, litter mates. And they've been with us. I mean, at 14 years, you think about 14 years of our lives, I was looking back at all the things that these 2 babies have lived with us through. So Mrs. International, moving to Florida, moving to Georgia, starting this business, losing Louise, moving to Mississippi. It's crazy that it was Boo, because we have Oliver here with us, who we know we are weeks, if we're lucky, days more likely about to lose, because he has Addison's disease. So we have brought him here with us. So the girls that are taking care of our puppies at our house wouldn't have to deal with end of life situations with our very geriatric set of babies.
And Scout, the litter mate, just had surgery 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And
well, she had that horrible case of gastritis, and we almost lost her. And then she developed a growth on her chest, and we almost lost her. And so
and Boo the whole time looking healthy as she could possibly be.
Well, Christmas we were home and we said, this dog is immortal. This dog's going to outlive every other dog. In 14 years, she never had a health problem ever. I don't think we ever had her at the vet for anything.
So.
But right up to the very, I will say, as awful and horrible as this is, she was spry and healthy and happy. And then she went outside yesterday and laid down at the foot of the steps and didn't come back in.
So we're going to struggle through this and update you, and that's why you didn't get a video when you normally do, but we do have to put out a video because we've got sponsors and we've got responsibilities. So, and we do want to keep you updated, and I mean, you know, you guys go through everything with us, so this is another part of life, and so you get to see this too. Sorry.
Sorry.
But we want to update you on what's going on, and there has been a lot since we last put out a Restoring Hope video. So just to catch you up on some things that had been in the process but are ongoing still.
Forever.
Yeah, the rear stairs got some additional work done to those, and you can see Joey working on.
Yeah, this is Joey doing the sanding there at the bottom. One of many projects he's done around here.
You know, other ongoing that are just big jobs. The electrical is still ongoing. We I don't think have any new plumbing, but there's still one more visit from our plumber before our final roof in is done. He's already scheduled to come back. John continues to work on windows, which are very complex and fascinating to see him put those together. And of course, he's using all old lumber for those.
I've used up a lot of this, but this was a lot more wood here, and so we have some poplar that I found mixed in. You couldn't tell until it was planed, but from the ratio of it, I would think it came from this front room up here, which has a little bit of different construction than the rest of the house. You know you did it right when you do this.
Let me see if
the window, I won't feel like the house is really, even though we've got wiring and plumbing, I told Kevin yesterday, I don't feel like I'm going to feel like the house is really starting to take shape until we get the windows back in. And so John working on his windows. I have not had a lot of time to work on windows between the weather. It's been bitterly cold with ice and snow.
And you went back to Arkansas for a week for your mother.
My mother had cataract surgery, so I had to go. I went back for her. We are chairing Pilgrimage 2025, which we're changing the way that pilgrimage is done entirely after 100 years.
You guys should come. It's going to be fun.
But that is for both of us. That's turned into a 40-hour to 60-hour to 80-hour a week job for free that we're doing. So I don't feel like I've gotten to do nearly as much.
No, we haven't been hands-on nearly as much, but thank goodness those guys have been up there and continue to work. One of the biggest surprises, which was extremely joyful, and I know we don't look real joyful right now, but Matthew McGinley, who you've seen us talk about many times, and Bean needs to tell us, what do you need?
Come here, buddy.
Be held.
Come here, buddy. Oh, come here.
Matthew Charles McGinley, you have to say it.
Matthew Charles McGinley.
Who, worked at Auburn for us, is now works at Rosalie, and did the amazing faux mob, the marble on the front of the house. Surprised us, like completely blindsided us with portraits that he had done of each of us.
Yes, and I'm sorry that I cackle like a hyena. Apparently, when I'm put in a situation where I am completely out of control, I have literally no control over what is happening in the moment. My response is to cackle like a hyena. So enjoy.
So he's got us in period appropriate attire, and actually a lot of sentimental and personal items in each one of these
should we
portraits.
talk about what's in them?
Yeah, talk about what's in
So
yours.
mine, the little puppy dog behind me in the chair, you can see that's my Spriggity Sprite. She was one of my heart babies, love of my life, little rescue pom. We called her the creature because she just had like one tooth, and
she only had one tooth when we adopted her.
Yeah, just this weird little creature, and I loved and adored her. And we lost her. It was very much a situation probably like we're about to go through again, where we lost her unexpectedly, and then within a couple months we lost Gus, who is in Kevin's portrait and who was also the love of my life. So I lost two very dear animals very close together a couple years ago. So Matthew put both of those in each of our portraits. I am holding a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, which is my favorite book, and it's open to chapter 16, which is my favorite chapter. On the table under my right hand is the deed to Hope Farm. He's drawn it as though it's an original deed to Hope Farm. Behind me is a bird cage. I've always had birds, almost our entire married life I've had birds. I don't have them right now because we're not in a place where we can care for them, but I always have. And then he put the appropriate late 18th, early 19th century sprigware that I'm collecting to put back into Hope Farm is on the table. The portrait is full of camellias. That we have camellias all over the grounds here at Hope Farm. So it's perfect. In yours?
In mine, I've got the fawn that I saw that we've named Hope is behind me, which I just love. I've got Gus, and then also there's a fern, which was my favorite house, which we had in Florida. I guess is still there, but we just don't own it
we don't
anymore.
own it anymore.
Her
name was Fern, so he put an actual fern. He didn't put the house, but an actual fern.
Right. So just a special gift that he gave us.
And he's going to be doing the faux painting. He's going to do a mural in the entire dining room. So he did the portraits to go with what he's going to be putting in the dining room. But I have to tell you how much I trust Matthew, because I don't relinquish control of my design choices like to anybody. And we had set where all the sconces were going to be in the dining room, because there'll be no overhead light in the parlor or in the dining room. And so we have a number of sconces going around the room. And Matthew came over one day and said, I need you to move these two sconces further in. And I was like, no. And he was like, no, really, I've got some plans for this space and I need you to move them. So I was like, okay, move the sconces. Had Kevin said move the sconces, I would have died on that hill probably.
Well, yeah, he was painting that room, so I guess he had some.
Yeah, I was like, well, he's got a plan. He's going to paint, we've asked him for certain things in that room. And so I thought, oh, well, he probably wants to put, this house here or whatever. But I never in a million years would have thought custom portraits. And we will, when we're on pilgrimage, we will be receiving in period costume for the house, and I'm having a dress made that's just like the one in the picture.
Yes.
I'm struggling on Kevin.
I'm supposed to get something.
You are, but I'm struggling finding somebody who can make
so
you
if
a
you
frock
can
coat.
make a frock coat,
I will send you the fabric.
It looks like the one in this portrait. Send it to us. So that
this
was
is
huge.
Not Oliver, by the way. I want to make sure everybody knows that that's the
Bean.
one I've just talked about. This is Bean.
Yeah, Bean.
It's a Bean.
Yeah.
Oh, Beans?
And Bean is younger, thankfully, but we do have 5 dogs that are getting up that
10
age.
or
Well,
older.
we have 4 now, I guess.
Yeah,
So it's we have been preparing ourselves for a while, but
not
it's
for
impossible. It's impossible to prepare yourselves for that to happen. So that was an amazing, huge event. But then we had another big event, something that was like not in the budget at all.
What is this one?
But needed to be done. We had, I'm going to say it right, Dendrochronology.
No, you're not going to say it.
Dendrochronology.
There you go. You got it.
You tell them about Mick and what
Chronology
is.
It literally tells you what it is. Dendro, meaning wood, chronology, meaning line of time. So I'm going to let Nick explain to you the difference between just dating a tree and doing dendrochronology on a structure. I did not watch his explanation, but I bet his explanation is much better than mine ever would be. But Mick is an archaeologist, originally from the UK. He was on Time Team, which is one of my favorite television shows. I didn't realize it was him when I was talking to him on the phone. But he was an archaeologist on Time Team. He has done excavations all over the globe. And when I say all over, I mean, like he did an excavation at St. Helene, which is the most remote island like in the world. It's the place where they imprisoned Napoleon the second time because they knew he could not get off the island. So Mick is a world-renowned archaeologist and dendrochronologist, and he now runs a company up in Maryland where he does dendrochronology for a living, and he and his wife Jane, and they just happened to be at a conference. I reached out to him, gave him the whole history of Hope Farm, told him why I thought we needed to do this, and they just happened to be in New Orleans. And were able to run up here on their day trip, gave us some of their time. He was able to take samples of quite a few areas of the home. We didn't have enough time for him to do, lock, stock, and barrel. Ideally, I would have loved it if he could have sampled every beam in the house and under the house. There was too
Because
much.
there's so many questions.
There's so many questions. The beams under the house still have a little too much water in them. It'll take them a little while to dry out entirely. And by a little while, it could take up to 5 years for those beams to completely dry out after the intrusion of water after the fire. But the interior beams were all good. And he could take beams from obviously the 18th century portion of the house, and then what could also be an 18th century portion of the L. And so unfortunately, the unfortunate part of this, right, is that we still probably won't know definitive dates. For dendrochronology to work, you have to have a very deep library of samples, similar samples from the similar area, from the same area, because they've got to cross-reference weather patterns and ecological events. And because most homes in Natchez, their walls are not open, people are not busting open their walls for Mick to come take core samples, he doesn't have a large library. But we figured this
is the only time.
Pretty good monetary investment, I'll tell you. It wasn't cheap, but we pray that in our lifetime, the walls of Hope Farm will never be open again, right?
That's the goal.
This is the one shot to get these samples.
So we had to do it.
My name is Michael Worthington. I'm a dendrochronologist out of Baltimore, and we come down today to look at this house. What we're trying to do is a technique called dendrochronology. And what we use is the wood in the buildings to date the structure. And the way we do that is initially we'll go out into the woodland, cut a tree down. We know trees put one annual ring on a year. And if you count the number of rings, you'll know how old the tree is. If you look closer, you'll see the rings are different sizes, and that's dependent on climate. So warm, wet years are wide, drought, hot years are narrow. And over a period of time, that becomes unique. And all trees growing in that area will pick up a similar pattern, not the same size rings, but they'll all be wide, all be narrow at the same time. And if we take a sample from the tree and then come to our building, take a sample out piece of wood like this one here, sand it up, measure the samples measure the rings in the sample, compare that with our tree from outside, those rings will match up where they're wide, where they're narrow. And then what we can do is, because we know the date of the tree, we can assign a date going back to every ring. We can then take those rings from the tree and take it across to a sample. And if we have bark edge on it, we can say this piece of wood was felled in, I don't know, I'll make a date up, the summer of 1810.
But also, while he was here, just coincidentally, Scott Hanson, our friend Scott Hanson, came from Maine.
Yes.
He does a trek down this way every couple of years. And we've gotten to be friends with him. He's the incredible author of
Restoring a Historic House by
Yes.
Scott Hanson. Go to his website to buy your copy of his book, not Amazon. Go to Scott's website. Scott is probably one of the nation's he's considered one of the nation's leading experts on preservation. And we are so honored to have him as a friend. He's a colleague, which is great, but to have him as a friend and, to be able to just enjoy some fellowship time with him was incredible. But then he came in
with some new ideas, didn't he?
Yes, that we told Scott the problem in Natchez. First of all, the problem as a homeowner, even if you're a preservationist, as a homeowner, I should not have listened to anything anybody else thought about Hope Farm when I came into it the first time, right? I should have just come into it clean slated.
Yeah.
Because you let everybody's bias on the property affect the way that you read the structure. You just do. If some other person who's also an expert looks at you and goes, no, it can't be this, then you have in your mind, well, no, it can't be that, or it's not that. Well, Scott came in with two bonuses. No preconceived ideas about when or how Hope was built. And I think this is probably the thing he has that none of us have that is so special. He's from Maine. He reads 18th century English built structures every single day. We don't have that down here. We do not have a ton of English built structures from the 18th and early 19th century. We're not as familiar down here with, we look at English building types and we're going to date them later based more on the fact that, you know, we had early French and Spanish settlers here. Anyway, Scott was able to look at it without a jaundiced eye and kind of read it his way. And I going back and looking at it, I find his hypothesis to be very convincing.
In looking closely at the installation of the trim in the lower level of the L in the upper dining room,
Okay.
what
So
you
this
believe
end.
was the dining room.
Okay.
So looking first at the further end, in almost all locations, the federal style trim elements are installed directly to the framing, so the plaster butted up to the wood. That is a method of framing, of trimming, that predates the mid-19th century. You really see it up to about 1820, 1830.
Okay.
In one location, the lath and plaster ran behind the trim.
Okay.
That indicates that that trim was relocated and that wall was added. It's pretty clear that those spaces were built, probably federal trim, installed to the framing, clearly before 1820 and possibly as early as the 1790s.
And this is the L, the far
Yeah,
end.
The far L.
Okay.
In the closer L, of course, the lower room was redone in the 1940s.
Right.
There's nothing we can really tell there. But the room above, which you believe was the family dining room, also has its trim installed to the framing. And again, it's federal style trim with a little hint of Greek revival coming into the molding profiles. So I think that is actually a bit later, 1820s, 30s. Maybe a 15, 20, 30 year separation between the two parts of the structure. Both clearly later than the two primary rooms in the front building. My hypothesis is the early rooms are French, early 18th century. When the property came into British hands at the end of the 18th century, this structure with its low ceilings and old construction was not a desirable place to live for those people at that time. So they built the little structure at the far end, 2 rooms on each floor.
Okay.
The kitchen, very rudimentary, but still federal.
Right.
There's just enough there, so there's some style going on. And then a short time later, they built the second part of the L.
Okay.
And at some point, subsequently, the 2 rooms here had the ceiling lifted, got reconstructed, and became part of this house, which is clearly Greek revival. And so this is likely, as we see it today, 1830s, 40s.
Awesome.
At that point.
So close to what I thought. I think because I had gotten in my mind that Catherine made up so much history to go with the house, that I had never looked closely at those last rooms. I had the dates very close to right, 1820-ish. I was like, this is definitely 1820s, but never considered that they were built independently as a British house, because this was an old house. Never even looked at it that way. So that is, I love new eyes and like the smartest eyes on this subject in the nation. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
But basically, I think what it boils down to is we could have 2 18th century portions of this property. We could have a 1780 structure built by the Spanish, and then we could have a 1795 part of a structure built by the British, who came in right afterwards. So It's very interesting. And unfortunately, we have a mystery period on the chain of title. I know everybody's going to be like, what? Just like you did with the trees. You were like, well, do the tree ring study. And, you know, there's reasons that can't be done. Same thing here. We have a missing section of time on our chain of title. We know when Grand Prix was here, and then we pick up about 1805. And that is a 15-year period from, I guess a 16-year period from when
1790
Grand Prix...
1805.
89 to 1805, where we don't really know what was going on here. So it's fascinating.
Yes, so more questions than answers, but still interesting to think about.
Yeah, fascinating to think about. Really fun to think about. And has kind of given me a little bit, I know this is ridiculous to say, but the fact that I thought this end of the property was like 1830, I almost was like disregarding it. Like, oh, that's the new end, you know? And so now realizing that it
Looking at it
may be an 18th
differently.
century
Yeah.
structure, or I don't know, that's ridiculous. 1830 is still unbelievable. But, you know, when you've got 18th century at the front and then mid 19th century at the back, who cares? Well, whatever. It's just that's the new section. Turns out maybe not.
So very interesting. A lot of things have been going on that we just that are kind of worth noting, but are, you know, quick. We won't spend a whole lot of time on. We did go to a fantastic New Year's Eve party at Lansdowne, which is a fantastic house that we've videoed.
That will be on pilgrimage.
That will be on
You can
pilgrimage,
come see
and got a nice little view of fireworks going down Main Street, which was fun.
We live in a Hallmark movie. I need you to understand that.
I mean,
Natchez is a Hallmark movie. I don't care what people say about Mississippi. You're going to hear all kinds of smack talk about Mississippi. And I can't speak to the rest of Mississippi, but I can speak to Natchez. This place is a Hallmark movie. You need to come.
yeah. Another, you know, big thing that's happened over the last month, we had a gentleman reach out to us. Is he from Jackson, Perrin?
Right outside of Jackson.
A great mason from right outside of Jackson, Perrin Knight. And
Amazing.
And he's great. And he came down, he and his wife, and we kind of showed him around. We've had several projects that, you know, that we'd kind of been putting on the back burner.
Yeah.
And he was kind enough to come in and knock some of those out. A lot of those we were kind of like, how are we going to do
What are we
that
gonna
exactly?
do?
I'm not sure.
We're so overwhelmed by the number of projects that we have that seriously, several of them are just like, I can't think about that right now.
Yeah.
And the masonry was one of the, we'll find a mason eventually. Like, we've got so much else going on. And Perrin Facebooked me. And, you know, it's always weird when people reach out on social media because you never know what you're getting, really.
Right.
We had an incident this week where our cell phone number was given out, and that can be dangerous for us. And kind of the same thing on social media when people reach out and they're like, hey, we want to come see you, we want to come meet you. It's always really scary because 99.9% of the time it's going to be great, but sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
And so when Perrin reached out, I was like, oh, who is this guy? And then he and his wife came, and they are the literal loveliest people. And he really did just want to work on the project with us. Fixed one of the problems that I was I think one of the reasons I didn't want to deal with the kitchen floor is I was afraid what we were going to find when we pulled it up.
Yeah.
You want to tell them
the
about
kitchen floor, which was what we think may be English and early, had sunken, had fallen.
I think.
And
Collapsed.
And there is right outside that wall we have a cistern. So put 2 plus 2 together, that looks like it could be a bad issue of the cistern and a collapse into that area.
After the water from the fire, I was afraid. I thought, I'm looking at it again, like he said, 2 plus 2 is 4, and I'm thinking they dumped 50,000 gallons of water on this house over a period of 3 days to put out this fire. It filled the cistern. The cistern's 200 years old. The walls aren't good, and it's collapsed underneath there. And then as the kitchen floor started collapsing, it was like this slow folding in on itself. I just thought,
and it's the only brick floor.
yeah, and it sits right on the dirt. And so it was, can you see the panic? So that's one of the first things we had Perrin address. It wasn't the cistern. It just was the floor is dirt, and because it got so wet, it did just kind of go plunk a little, just kind of sunk a little bit. It's dirt right under the bricks. So it just kind of
built it back up with sand and then put the brick back out.
Perrin
and got
did a
it nice
beautiful
and
job.
flattened
But let's
out.
talk about the other things Perrin has done before we go on
Okay.
to the other.
Also the chimney in
The chimney breast.
the parlor, which is interesting, and we kind of love pointing out to people because there was a finished chimney and then another finished chimney around that.
Right. It was like a little bitty chimney breast from the 18th century, and then when they did the 18, we think that we really are fairly certain that the Greek revival jazz handsy upgrade was done in the about 1830 to give it a more formal look to fit the big Egyptian marble fireplace mantle that they brought in. They needed a much larger breast. So they brought that new chimney breast out. And so when the ceiling in the living room collapsed with the fire, it broke off the top of the chimney there at the breast, and you could see that completely finished little tiny chimney breast.
I'm sure they never knew was there
in the back.
And
one of the things that Scott pointed out to us, that again, because we're looking at so much, we have 2 federal period mantles in the L that are obviously not original, and I could tell they weren't original because there should be a plastered space. The mantle shouldn't fit directly over the box. Just a couple of things. I knew they weren't original to there. But he pointed out those are of the right size and of the right date. They probably were the living room, dining room mantles in the main house. And when it got its fancy schmancy update, they were moved out to the L.
It makes total sense.
Perfect sense.
But that's another thing that makes this so hard to read. It's because you can't look at the window and say, oh, that's a 12/12 window. It's older than the 6/6. Because they moved the windows around.
Yeah.
They did that with a lot of the different items, and that's the way they used to do things. They would build a room, and then maybe somebody else would buy the property, they'd take that room and they'd move it over there, and they'd add on to it, and then they'd add on to that, and so trying to figure all that out is difficult.
Lots of reusing of materials. One thing that Scott did point out, we had been looking at, it looked like they're joist hangers in the first 2 rooms that are low. They're very, very low. And even Carter Burns, the H&F, was with me, and we're like, what are these doing here? Were these from a shed roof? But you wouldn't have a shed roof in the living room. Like, what is this? And Scott just pointed out, these are just joist hangers. Your ceilings were much, much, much lower. This is your earlier 18th century ceiling height. And then they continued to raise the ceiling. So it makes perfect sense when you look at it with a unbiased, clear eye.
So he had to come in and stucco and brick.
Oh yeah, we're back to Perrin. Sorry, Perrin.
That chimney back up.
Put the brick up
to the ceiling height. And he is also going to, when we get more lime mortar, which we've got a new partner that I think we're going to introduce soon, to get our stucco and mortar back down here. He's going to clean out the cistern, make it look really nice.
And we have to rebuild again. Things that pop up. The whole front wall under the porch was covered with ivy, and it was.
So you couldn't tell the damage was there.
And when we pulled the ivy off, literally the front wall almost fell. It's just stacked bricks, barely, and it's like bowing out. So he's going to come and
6x6 area there that he's going to come and redo.
Now, luckily, it's not structural. It's just. The house isn't going to fall down. If that falls down, the house is on pier and beam foundation. It's fine, but it's not good. It's not good.
It's not good. But like I said, it's one of those things that we were putting on the back burner, hadn't thought about, and he just came in and said, "Hey, I can do this stuff for you."
Let me solve this problem.
Yes, come solve this problem for us.
Great price.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes. We told you we had unseasonably cold weather down here, and I'm sure if you live in the United States, you know this happened.
It is winter.
But it is.
But it was cold.
It was colder than normal, and we actually got a little bit of a dusting of snow, which is crazy because they got more snow further south.
Yeah,
makes no sense at all.
It snowed on the beach. I'm sure you've seen it. Orange Beach was
and New Orleans,
snow,
and
then the ocean, which is
crazy,
weird.
But we did get a small dusting, and it was kind of pretty. Part of the things that are going on and still going on, you'll see in the next video. They're starting to put the ceiling on. We got all that lumber ordered. They're starting to put the ceiling on the gallery and the L. So that's nice. It'll be kind of finished.
Before the fire, in the kitchen, it was 2 doors that went outside with a transom over the top. Well, the fire, of course, burned those doors out and revealed the original jambs. So the doors had been set inside a jamb, and outside of that were original jambs that showed us there had been jib doors. Jib doors are windows that have a wooden door at the bottom, and then 2 sashes that will raise, and it works as a door. It is not because doors or windows were taxed. We can get into that at another time. Okay, it has nothing to do with that. But the 2 doors in the kitchen had originally been jib doors. So fast forward several months, the basement under Hope was full, literally floor to ceiling, stacked with stuff. ages of stuff. And I was in there with Toby one day and we were cleaning out and I found a set of the jib doors and one set of sashes. So we know what should be in there. And so John is going to use that original set on one side and then recreate an identical set for the other side. So those will go back to being 2 jib doors like they were when that room was first added in the 1830s.
Yeah, so that's going to be very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool going back in time.
But then we had some bad discoveries.
Yes. Well, one of the things that actually Joey helped us with, and Toby, was to pull out a lot of beadboard that we had down there that was kind of sectioned a room off.
There was a ton of wood in the basement that, yes, Catherine, you're right, had made a room and a bathroom, and then she'd used some other like paneling to create these other section spaces. Like it was a bunch of small rooms. Well, you expose wood to standing water for months on end.
It's not gonna go well.
We had treated for mold 50 times, but I think it just was too bad. So we made the decision to take all of that wood out. It not only did it need to come out because of the mold, but it was blocking the airflow. You need cross ventilation in a basement like this in the South. You have to have it. And it was blocking all of that. So we took all of that rotted, nasty wood out, and what did we find?
We found one beam that was 14 feet long. It's a 6x8 cypress beam that was rotten. So it had water intrusion and then termite damage.
And then fungus. There was fungus.
It
had been boxed. You should never do this. Your wood needs to have airflow. That's why we don't do a ton of insulation in the South. Down here it's so humid, you do not want to eliminate airflow around your wooden structures. And they had boxed this beam in with beadboard, so they'd wrapped it. So for 100 years, I guarantee you, it was done in 26, this beam had no access to airflow. So we had fungus growing in it, we had water that had gotten into it, and it probably just humidity. It probably was not from the fire, it was not from any kind of water leak, it was just years and years of held humidity, and it just turned that beam to paper.
Yeah.
Just mulch.
But fortunately, we have Mac at 601 Salvage, and we went out there looking for a beam that would work because we love to replace old with old if we can, and we found a good beam out there, and it hasn't been done yet, but we're going to.
It's on the list.
It's on the list. We're going to replace that beam with another old cypress beam. It actually wasn't on one of the load-bearing walls. Yeah. It was across the middle of the kitchen.
It's bounce beam, basically.
So it's basically a bounce beam, but
Wait,
with that kind of stretch, you need some more support.
Is it the kitchen? It is the kitchen, isn't it? I've been thinking it was the dining room. It is the kitchen.
Yep.
Which is funny because you should see the pile of materials we have in the kitchen. Like if it was going to fall down, it would fall down right now because we've got so much weight
There's
stacked
a lot of
in
weight
there.
in there. Yeah. There's going to be more when we put that stove in there.
Yeah, we're going to want that.
800-pound stove.
We're going to want that nice and sturdy when we put that stove in there.
For sure. Another big project that Eddie and Laura and Toby are all working on, and Joey definitely had a hand in. They started looking at, we saw that the handrails on the front gallery, several of them are pretty bad.
Yeah,
so,
it started out so small. It's like everything else. It was so small. I was going to just strip the paint off of the top handrail all around the gallery, the balustrade. And as I started stripping the paint, I discovered that the top of the balustrade was 98% wood filler. And I'm not kidding. We keep everything original. If there's any way it can be salvaged and kept, we're going to salvage and keep it. But they had rotted to such a point and been filled to such a point that they were just filler. So we're like, we'll take these off.
Yeah.
And we'll do new ones on here.
So the handrails turned into one post. The bottom of the post had rotted, and then the bottom of another post had rotted, and then we got to looking at that post. Actually, Eddie discovered this, and it's so funny. I mean, we've only looked at this house a million times. He was like, this one post is not tapered like all of the other posts. That Greek Revival taper that you get, large at the bottom and small at the top, it was just squared.
Yeah.
Which, we had seen on, some bad work on some of the columns in the back gallery that had to be redone.
Don't know how we
never
missed
noticed
it at
this.
the front. And then individual, balusters, like 50% of those were rotten at the bottom. And then it was like, well, these steps are pretty bad. Do you want to go ahead and redo these steps?
So it's turned into a large project. But
so basically we're rebuilding the front porch.
Yeah, they're getting through it though. And I mean, the front needs to be
to look good.
really nice. So, so that's a big project that they're in the middle of. So tell them what else you did. What night was this? Saturday night? that Lane went back in
I
time.
did. I time
You didn't
traveled.
go back, like if you were going to go back in time, you probably would have gone to find out what was going on with Hope Farm.
Absolutely. I would
But
be
this
right
time
here in
machine
1789.
Took you back to the 1980s.
1980s. My friend Diane, it was her birthday party, and they just bought a beautiful home called Mount Repose. Again, we have a video of it here. And if you come to Pilgrimage, one of our events is going to be at Mount Repose. It's not open for tour, but you can come for the event. And she decided she wanted to have a 1980s birthday party, and we were all instructed to dress like it was the 1980s. And so girlfriend got her big hair back out.
Yep. And you looked adorable.
So like, it's like my friend Diane's birthday, and we're like gonna have a party, and like it's 80s themed, and like I grew up in the 80s, so I'm so ready.
Will any parents be there?
Like, I don't know, gross, yuck. Is my hair big enough though? And I was out of frosted lipstick, and I'm really feeling like grody to the max because my lips don't look right. I did get my wing on my shadow, so my eye will look bigger. But I just really am feeling like very insecure about my like lipstick. And I have like new shoes, and I took like the laces out because like ew, who wears laces with their shoes? And like I got new leg warmers, but they're like not quite the right color green, but I'm like all the color all the time. Like neon is the best. So like, I hope I can just deal with my lips and have a fun time anyway.
We do have a community partner that we want to thank. I think a lot of people assume that since we do a lot of these projects, we just have money that we're just sitting on in a pot, like we keep it in the stove or something, and we just like pull it out as we need it. We don't. We're average people who have to take loans to do things like this. And we always rely on local community banks to partner with us because they tend to have a vested interest in the community. Big nationwide banks don't. They don't care.
No.
They're not going to look at this as something that is meaningful. And so a big bank is going to look at this project and go, that's a burned out shell. There's no way we're taking the risk on that.
Yeah.
And we even had a local community bank that didn't get it at all. They came in kind of, we're going to work with this. And they were like, no, we're not doing this. And then we went to our friends at Concordia Bank. I have to tell the whole story, and I'm sorry, but you have to listen to it because this is what good banking is. We'd had the problem with the first bank. And so I called on a Sunday, I called my friend who appraised Hope Farm for us as finished and said, hey, appraiser, I don't want to call him out. If you were going to pick a bank in town, who would you pick? And he was like, I would pick Concordia Bank. They are community minded and they appreciate historic properties. And I happen to have the cell phone number of the bank president because he was the president of the Historic Natchez Foundation.
Well, yeah, I mean, we knew him and had met with him, months before, and should have gone to them first, but we didn't.
Anyway, that's neither here nor there. We can't go back in time. It worked out like it's supposed to. So
I had a time machine.
Called him on Sunday afternoon, leaving him a message that said, I know it's Sunday. I know this isn't appropriate to call you today. I apologize. Please call me tomorrow. We've run into some snags. We'd love to visit with you and see if you can help us out. 10 minutes later, my phone rang on a Sunday night, and I sat and visited with Pat Big Lane for 30 minutes. And even then he kept saying, well, first he was like, what's your credit score? And I was like, it's over 800. And then he was like, well, what do your income tax returns say? And I told him that. And then he was like, well, what did the appraisal say? And I told him that. And he was like, I don't understand the problem.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer.
So then Kevin went the next day and started working with Pat Galloway, who is over that part of the lending. And Pat kept saying the same thing. He was like, what's the catch? I swear up until closing, they were waiting for the catch, right? They were waiting to see why the other bank was being difficult to work with. And there's no catch. It's just it's a no-brainer. And they saw that vision. They saw our vision. They see the importance of Hope Farm to this community and to the state and really to the nation. I would say this should be a National Historic Landmark anyway, and have partnered with us on this project to help us see it through to the end. And we cannot say enough wonderful things about them.
Yes, they have been amazing to work with. And if you need local banking, Concordia Bank.
We tell people all the time, if you're going to do historic property, go to a local bank. If you're in Natchez, Mississippi and you need a bank, go to Concordia.
Yeah.
Everybody that we've worked with there, everybody.
And we now have a huge sign on the side of Hope Farm because we said to them, put a big sign up here. Tell everybody.
People need to know who's helping us do this.
Yeah, because we love to call out people who are doing the right thing, and that's what they're doing.
Well,
so.
and everybody looks at us and they're like, oh, you guys are so great for doing this. Well, we're not doing it alone. We're not doing this one alone.
Sure.
We've got to have a multitude of partners on this. Everybody from our crew, you know, Toby, who's most days blowing leaves around the yard, which is great. But all the way up to the president of Concordia Bank. Everybody's got to work together to make this a dream of this magnitude become a reality.
As soon as 30 minutes ago,
Yes.
Lane rigged up.
We didn't know what was in the hole. You know, we told you earlier that we were afraid that the cistern went all the way under the foundation. Until 30 minutes ago, we didn't know if that was the case or not. And I decided it was time.
So she rigged up. She took one of
Why
our
did you
snap
not
lines.
film me?
Because it was raining. We went out in the rain. And I was
contraption.
I was setting this up. But yeah, she took a snap line, put it around her phone, attached a flashlight to it.
No, I
and
did
dropped
the
it down.
flashlight separately. I thought
Oh,
about
you did?
attaching the flashlight to the phone, but I was like, that could fall off, and then we wouldn't have our super handy dandy tiny flashlight, also from Concordia Bank. So I tied that individually, and I lowered it down in the hole, got it where I wanted it, and then I tied up my phone, and I lowered it down in the hole where I wanted it, and we finally can see
That we do have a brick side to our cistern. It looks like it's probably brick with stucco over it,
and
most
it is
likely.
secure. It is solid.
Right.
There are no cracks. It's great.
Mhm.
So now we just have to fill it with sand.
Yeah, and not even that much sand because it's got a lot of dirt in there. So
Yeah.
it's a decent sized cavity. But
Yes, but not nearly as terrifying a monumental project. Again, in my brain,
the whole side of the L
the
would fall
whole
down.
side of the L is about to fall into the cistern.
Yeah.
And so that's not the case. So what's in the hole? Nothing. And we're thrilled with that. Now, over the years, owners have like dumped dirt down in it. So there's like this one column of dirt that comes up in the middle and nobody ever spread it out.
Probably really good dirt.
Ideally, I would love to get down there, get that dirt out, and dig around in the cistern a little bit to see what's gotten put down there over the years. But that's probably not going to happen. I'm going to be honest with you. The land itself is enough of an archaeological site.
Yeah.
I don't need to dig around in the cistern. So
Yeah.
we're just going to let those skeletons, whoever's dead at the bottom of the cistern, can just rest in peace down there because I'm not crawling down there.
So that's catching you up. You think you're caught up
Yeah.
now.
That's it. That's all.
So thanks for being there with us. Don't forget about the memorial for Joey's children. I'll put a link to Scott Hanson's website so you can
Yes.
buy his book, which is the Restoration Bible. It's not
Literally.
what it's called, but that's what we tell
But it
everyone.
should be. If you want to do anything in your historic home or learn anything about your historic home, Scott's book has the answer. It is a master's course in preservation in one volume. And I mean that genuinely. You don't need a master's. You need Scott's book.
So if you want to come see us for pilgrimage, it's happening at the end of March, 1st of April. Get on our website, ourrestorationnation.com, and you can buy tickets to our events or go to pilgrimagenatchez.com to buy tour house tickets, and there are other events there as well.
Gotta come to the soiree.
We've got to come to the soiree, which is going to be a big deal at Longwood. We've got a golf tournament. If you want to bring your partner and you don't want to look at houses, you can go to play golf, and your partner can go
Look at houses.
look at houses. So
Go to the parties.
and go to the parties. Yeah. So come, and it's going to be a good time. Thanks for being there with us, guys, and we will see you next time.